Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have full review of this, which is the HUAWEI MatePad Pro 12.2 must begin. In this case, we talk about the high-end tablet HUAWEI, although by price sincerely that competes with the mid-range of other manufacturers. This edition that I have in my hands is the most recommended model at the time of recording this video, as it has 12 GB of RAM and 512 GB of storage, with keyboard included, and not only with this keyboard, but also with a keyboard that can be used as a keyboard. The screen has a paper matte finish. This configuration would generally cost 24,999 pesos, according to the HUAWEI page. This would be more or less $1,200, but at the time of recording this video, it costs 14,999 pesos. So I insist that at this price it competes with mid-range tablets from other manufacturers. And in this case, you would have everything. You need, well, with the exception of the M Pen, so that would not come integrated into this kit. But obviously you can buy it separately. And here the remarkable thing is that in this accessory, the keyboard, you could keep it perfectly so that it does not get lost at any time. It does not go on the outside, although you can also paste it in this part if you want, but it is definitely a good set. Interestingly, there is also an edition with less RAM and less storage, although as of the day of recording this video, it is even more expensive than this edition, which has more storage and more RAM. That's why I tell you that this would be the recommended option. But join me now to know all the details, not without first reminding you that it is available in the official HUAWEI store. In the description, I'll leave you the purchase link in case you want to go buy it. Let's start talking about the design, and there is something very important to consider here, and are the materials that HUAWEI uses. Generally, most manufacturers use plastic frames or at best metal frames. HUAWEI makes an alloy to find the balance between strength and lightness, so the frames, for example, are made of an alloy of aluminum and magnesium, so we will find good strength, and at the same time, as I say, lightness. The back cover also has very interesting materials, so in addition to having a nice aesthetic, we find ultra-thin aeronautical grade fiberglass in this part, which not only gives us this soft touch, but also gives us a good level of resistance. Although it is not a device that resists water, but for everyday use, I think it holds up very well. In this case, the manufacturer incorporates a design line called Golden Silk that is inspired by the textures of traditional paintings on silk, and if you have this kind of texture inside, the touch is completely smooth, but the view looks very nice. This for a color edition called Champagne, which is the edition that brings paper matte screen, but is also available in black color. So it's super thin and again with a normal screen finish. The weight of this tablet is 508 grams. In this sense, as I say, you find one of its main strengths and attractions because it's not going to weigh if you carry it in your backpack. It is also 5 millimeters thick. So it's super thin, and again, if you're going to combine it with a keyboard case, it's obviously going to increase its thickness, but that happens with all tablets. So having the thinnest tablet possible helps us so that when you end up putting the case on it for transport or with keyboard, the sum total doesn't get so thick or so heavy. On the left side of this tablet, we will find the power button that at the same time is fingerprint reader. We will also find two sound grills, the top pass. On the right side, we are going to find two other grids for speakers and the USB-C charging port. On the bottom, we do not find any kind of port or special connector, and that is something very remarkable because other tablets can get to have pins in these parts or on the back in order to connect to keyboard accessories. However, HUAWEI is recently using near-link and other technology so that you don't need pins to power these keyboards or anything like that, so in that sense it looks very modern. Let's now talk about the keyboard, which in this case is called Glide Keyboard, and as I was saying, it incorporates the technology HUAWEI Link, so the linking is immediate. Just put the tablet in this part that has magnetic absorption and immediately detect it, so you press connect and ready. The keys have a very good travel, similar to what we would find on the compact. Obviously, they won't have any backlighting. And being a compact size, we don't have room for as many keys as a numeric keypad or something like that. But the important thing here is that it also incorporates a trackpad on the bottom. This trackpad is about 4-7 inches. It is not too big, but it has a soft touch and the click feels good. Although obviously it is not the most premium that Huawei has within their laptops, but enough to work comfortably in some documents and the like. What I was also telling you a moment ago is that it has the space to store the M Pencil, which is useful for. I have a demo unit, that's why you notice that it doesn't have the Spanish layout, which would include the letter N. Although there is something that I think could still improve the keyboard experience, and that is that when you detach the keyboard from the tablet, they are actually still linked. So if you want to write something, you will notice that the virtual keyboard does not appear. This is because it keeps detecting the keyboard nearby. So you would have to completely disconnect from this keyboard for the virtual keyboard to actually appear. Therefore, here the suggestion would be to enter the near link settings and manually disconnect from the keyboard so that the virtual keyboard finally appears. So in that sense, I think I would have liked it to automatically detect when I detach the tablet from the accessory and disconnect. In this case, I have a demo unit, so that's why you notice it doesn't have the Spanish layout that would include the letter N. But obviously the keyboard layout will depend on where you buy it from. If you buy it with official distribution in your country, it should arrive with a keyboard adapted to your country. And here another drawback I find in the keyboard is that it is not able to write well the tilde, that is, it writes it separated from the vowel, which can generate some confusion in those who write in Spanish. The problem is solved by going to the settings, then you go to the system and update section, then go to language and text input, and finally in default keyboard you choose the Microsoft option or any other keyboard you have, installed instead of the Celia keyboard. Once you configure this way, you will notice that the keyboard works a little better for those of us who speak Spanish. I insist, this may vary depending on your regions, but by doing this configuration you can already have the typing as it should be. And something that Huawei gets to highlight a lot of this tablet is that with this accessory, we practically have an experience that is closer to a laptop. That is, when you open the screen, the magnet is immediately stuck. So you do not need to make another move to adjust, but as it happens in a laptop, you open the screen and that's it. It's unlike other computers where maybe you have to create some setting or deploy a tab or something similar. So it seems like a pretty smart design. Although in this case you're limited to 2 tilt settings, but I think that's enough. We would have the default setting, and if you want you can peel off the screen to stick back on the second setting, but I insist, I think that for a tablet is quite well this section of tilt settings. And that's what we have in conjunction with this case, which by the way also comes with an interesting material that you're going to be able to clean more easily in case it gets stained. In terms of connectivity, this additional keyboard or case does not add any type of port, so you are completely dependent on the only USB-C port 3.1 Gen 1 that integrates this tablet. And moving on to wireless connectivity, we found support for Wi-Fi 6 network, so it has good download speed, and also Bluetooth 5.2 for connectivity with accessories with good stability. But what Huawei highlights most in its latest devices is the incorporation of Near-Link, which is a more modern technology than Bluetooth. Let's say it has greater capabilities, higher bandwidth, higher speed. So with Near-Link, you're going to connect to the M Pencil if you buy that version, and also to the keyboard. Now let's talk about the screen, which has a diagonal of 12.2 inches. It's a relatively large tablet, not the largest on the market, but with enough space to find a good balance again, as I said, between lightness and portability. And in this case, the space that this screen gives you. The resolution is 2800 and 840. The ratio of this screen is 3:2, which means it's not as wide as tablets that are more focused on consuming multimedia content. But it's a little bit taller to also give you a little bit more space. Good space when working with 2 applications in split screen, or when working with a document, since the tools come out at the top and would steal too much space if the screen is very wide. So it seems to me an adequate proportion in this case. It integrates OLED tandem technology. What does this mean? It is a very efficient technology in terms of energy consumption, while obviously retaining the features and benefits that we already know about the screens. OLED, like good contrast and good color, but as I tell you, in this case it's quite efficient, and at the same time it can reach very high peak brightness. So in this case, it reaches a peak brightness of 2000 nits when you're watching HDR content, so it can show us a lot of realism through it. So even though it doesn't have a 100% ratio focused on consuming multimedia content, if you're going to watch movies or series through this display, you're going to enjoy it quite a bit as well. It also has 144 Hz in its update rate, so the movements will be ultra fluid when you are browsing the system. The truth is that, as I say, it's a screen of excellent features that also comes with this paper matte finish that Huawei has become very popular. It is a very good finish because it avoids reflections in a great way if you usually use the tablet in environments where you have. I would also like to say that the screen is a little less smudged. Remember that in the box they include a special cloth to clean the screen more easily. Other manufacturers like Apple, for example, sell you a version with a similar finish or nano texture that raises the price a lot. So I highlight the incorporation of this paper matte finish on this tablet. Also, unlike the first generation of paper matte finish, in this case, I do not perceive this as easily as noise that could be perceived in the first generation, and does not lose as much contrast image as I insist was noticed. In past generations, so the finish of the screen has delighted me, I could even say that it gets to stain a little less. Remember that in the box you include a special cloth to clean more easily the screen, because if you could get to capture fingerprints a little more easily, but I think comparing all the benefits it offers you, I'm not at all bothered with the fingerprints being marked a little bit. By the way, with respect to other technologies of this screen, its touch sampling rate is 480 Hz, so it also responds very quickly to gestures or touches that you can get to do with your finger, and obviously in conjunction with the third generation M Pencil, with Near Link you get a very nice writing with virtually no latency. And with respect to the lower brightness, we're also going to find something very positive. The screen can get to give you a very comfortable experience, especially because it controls its brightness by pulse width modulation with a frequency of 2880 Hz. That is to say that to lower the brightness of the screen, actually say that the screen turns on and off. The same happens with other devices. But in this case, the speed is so fast that your eye, besides not perceiving it, does not become fatigued, as we might notice in screens that have a much lower rate. So it is a very good screen in every way, image quality, comfort and experience by the anti-reflective fast response, and it is also comfortable to the eye. And True Software also incorporates good options such as dark mode. Reading mode also that would allow us to have a display with a much more pleasant sepia tone. In fact, you can also regulate its intensity, and there is also the ebook mode, which is also similar, and you can choose. And if you wanted to switch completely to black and white, or if you wanted to have a little color but it lowers a little intensity to the screen to have a more comfortable viewing, also in case you want to read a book or similar things. Now let's talk about the sound. In total, it has 4 audio outputs, and the truth is that the sound is spectacular. Not only has good volume, but has very good clarity, and above all, a very good presence of bass frequencies, which is very remarkable in such a slim tablet. Honestly, the sound is completely spectacular and complements the screen experience very well. So for example, if you were thinking whether to buy a computer or buy a tablet, you should know that in this price range, this tablet would completely outperform computers on the screen, and the sound is simply spectacular. Let's listen to a small test, although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. So the sound is definitely spectacular, although it should be noted that it does not come with headphone jack, so that could be an absence to consider. If you want to use wired headphones, it should be through an adapter with USB-C. However, remember that you can use wireless headphones. Although lately Huawei has released very good quality headphones that, thanks to Nearlink, can also achieve a fairly short latency. In fact, also supports advanced AZADAC and also LHC, which is Huawei's own codec. So if you have wireless headphones compatible with these codecs, you can also enjoy very good quality audio. Remember that in the Huawei height sound settings, we will also find the possibility of accessing a 10-band equalizer. Although exclusive for when you use headphones, it is not possible to use them with the speakers, which fortunately in this case I do not see it necessary because they sound very good. Regarding the microphones, there are 4 in total. We will find 3 on the top, an additional one in the camera module area, which we will talk about a little bit later. But in terms of audio, I think you are also very well covered. Regarding the pickup, let's listen to a test. This is an audio recording made with the integrated microphones of this HUAWEI MatePad Pro 12 Phone 2. This device integrates an 8 megapixel camera with f-aperture 2.0, fixed focus with the ability to record in 4K, as you can see in this case I am in a well-lit setting right next to a window, and we found it to be of sufficient quality for video calls. In fact, in this price range again, if you compare it to laptops, here we'll find video recording quality far superior to what a computer could give you. Here, I'm in a slightly darker scene and we're still seeing good detail and good noise management. And this would be an even darker scene where it handles noise well, although obviously there is already little detail. Ideally, it would be nice to have some lighting nearby for video calls, but I think it does perfectly well for its task. And on the back we find a 13 megapixel camera with f1.8 aperture. This one supports video in 4K. And then we find an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera with f2.2 aperture, fixed focus. Although this one only records in full HD. I've already said this in other content. Personally, I consider unnecessary the incorporation of a second camera on the back. I would prefer to invest that budget in giving us another USB-C port or something similar. The ultra-wide camera is capable of recording video in full HD, so it doesn't have as much definition. That's why I don't consider so useful its incorporation, but it's present anyway if you want to use it. And the main camera, as you notice, if it can record in 4K, increasing the level of detail very well. And this would be more or less the result that we can get with this camera. I don't really use tablets to record video, but it's always good to find the support for this resolution. As for the software of this tablet, we are going to find Harmonious in its version 4.2 as the operating system. As you know, Huawei has a bit complicated the software issue recently, so it does not offer an update policy, although it regularly offers several system updates, but in this case, nothing promised. Let me show you some of the options we might enjoy on this tablet. For starters, with regard to customization, since we will find several themes available, and just like on your most recent phones, some of them will even have some level of animation between the always-on display cover and then the wallpaper or the lock screen. You could also customize your lock screen magazine style if you wanted to use some of your photos and the like. So at the level of customization is fine, as you saw, if you have the option of always-on display, something that is not very usual in tablets, but it is available here. It also allows you to switch between some available icons, and you can access the full store if you want to have even more variety, although obviously they do not apply throughout the system, and there are some applications that still remain with their natural icon. For the main screen, note that you can have different settings. You can change the size of the grid if you want them to be locked. Also, if you want or do not want recent apps to be displayed in the dock. So overall, it shows a very good level of customization. Plus, if you want to have all the apps on the main screen or want to have a small app drawer so you have everything a little cleaner and your main screen does not look. So, for example, to take a screenshot, just swipe up to show all applications and that's it. Only if you have this app drawer design, it will be disabled. Another option that might be attractive to some people, which is to swipe up on some icons to show you shortcuts. In the case of the Notes application, for example, it would show you a notebook simply by swiping up, or on the calendar could also show you a little more. It also has a smart detection tool, so you have to decide between one option or the other. It also includes another mode that is for older people. Note that it will allow the text to be much larger. You can even make the long press a little slower and the letters huge. Depending on the use of each person, we will also find different gestures. For example, to take a screenshot, just tap twice with the knuckle as if you are knocking on the door and the capture is made immediately. If you do this same gesture but with two knuckles, you're going to notice that you start a screen recording, so you can record a tutorial or something similar. Or even with a single knuckle, you could enclose something specific that you want to crop, so you can share and later adjust that crop. It also has a smart detection tool so that the screen doesn't turn off while you're viewing it, and it has other hover gestures that work well. For example, let's say you are in a web page and you could perfectly slide over it doing these gestures. Although in web pages, it could also get a little confused depending on the sections that integrate the page. But in general, you will see that it works, and you could also take a screenshot by simply closing your fist. Later, this gesture will also allow you to share a screenshot with other devices that is not yet enabled in this version. We are also going to find an option to open applications in floating window. For that, we need to open this side panel that is available from the side. Simply hold your finger and then release to bring up this bar. From here, you can open up to 2 applications in this window mode, so you can multitask at the same time. Notice that if I want, I can open another application, for example, the calculator, and in this case, I have 3 applications open at the same time. It does allow us to resize these small windows, so that's a good thing. It even lets us change the ratio of the application. The only downside is that it only supports 2 applications in this floating window format, which I find curious. From my point of view, it would be more advanced and more attractive if it allowed us to have any number of applications in this floating window format. In fact, if you are in any application and you want to transform it to a floating application, just slide it to the top right corner, or if you want, you could also slide it to the top left corner, and in this case, you are going to open 2 applications at the same time in split screen. So if you combine the split screen together with the floating applications, you could have up to 4 applications open at the same time. So I think you can have a nice productivity level. You can move these windows through this small bar, or you can also minimize them in a small bubble or maximize them depending on the use you want to give. And in this case, to take advantage of the 100% the Pencil, Huawei includes its own Notes app, where it's very handy because you can create multiple notebooks or notepads and then you can access them. And in this case, the pen response is extremely good. It has very low latency, so it's practically going to give the feeling of handwriting. In fact, in conjunction with the paper matte finish of the screen, we also have a very good feeling when you're writing on the screen. In addition, obviously, we are going to be able to have shape recognition as well, and you have a selection tool that would allow you to easily move some stroke, drawing, whatever you have on the screen. You can also insert some images or pictures to your notes. For example, this document that I had scanned, I can insert it over here and that's it. In fact, I could also directly insert PDF documents to my note so that I could trace over it, make annotations and any kind of additional elements. So it's very handy, this app, to be able to work on your documents. In fact, when you create a notebook, note that you can select, in this case, the cover, for example, with a very good variety depending on the style you want to give to your notebooks. We will also be able to find, in this case, the selector of the type of sheet, if you want it to be a line sheet, gridded, or even with some templates to plan your activities of the month, and even also to have a to-do list and many other things. So there are many styles of notes, and you can also select whether you want it to be a horizontal note or a vertical note, depending on the work that you're going to do. And finally, also the color background of the note, whether you want it to be completely white or you want it to be a sepia note or different finishes. So the Huawei Note app really comes in handy, and in this case, as you can see, it can be synchronized with Huawei's cloud, so you can back up your notes and sync them with all your devices. Obviously, if your Huawei cloud storage fills up, you will need to pay. So I would recommend disabling the backup of photos or gallery items, which is what will use the most space, but keep the rest of the features active. And in this case, we also offer the Go Paint application that will give us practically a professional canvas when drawing. In this case, it includes a tutorial, so you know some of its tools. The truth is that in this sense, we will find a tremendous variety of many brushes, but in this case, the curious thing is that it includes a paint engine called Functian 2.0 of Huawei that practically simulate a real canvas, i.e. practically going to notice how the paint is absorbed, simply to give an example depending on the canvas that you have selected. So for example, in this case, we are going to select this canvas and we are going to paint, and you are going to realize how, in this case, it can make a small transition so that you can see how the paint has been absorbed, and obviously you can select the color you want, make the necessary strokes, and it will also recognize in this case if you are pressing hard on the brush or if you're simply passing the brush over it. Or obviously you can work with different layers. The truth is that it is a completely professional drawing application. For example, you could also activate this blurring dot of, and somehow it tries to expand the ink that you have already painted. So well, I insist that it has quite professional drawing tools. It will depend entirely on your skills. I have zero skills, but you should know that it even has adjustments for hue, saturation, color balance. It even has the curves to adjust the lighting of your drawing and many more things. Honestly, it is a completely professional application to take advantage of the 100% of the capabilities you have on this pen. Also note that we will find a video editor called Petal Clip, although it is not optimized to take advantage of the 100% horizontal screen, but hey, here you could also get to have a basic editing. As you can see, the interface of the editor is already adapted, unlike the interface where you select the videos and other things, but it comes with several options, all completely free, without any watermark and without having to pay any subscription or something similar. So that's an editor that could be attractive as part of the software on this device as well. And obviously you could also take advantage of the ecosystem options through Super Device, for example. In this case, I could connect very easily to my laptop to project the screen wirelessly. You see that you just wait and approve the request and immediately you've connected. In this case, note that there is already the wireless projection of the screen. Now I could simply transmit, for example, a window from my computer to this tablet, all wirelessly, and I could even interact with my computer by taking advantage of the touch interface of the screen. So I insist that the interaction is really very advanced at the ecosystem level. Likewise, remember that they have the Super Hub, which is a shared clipboard between all the devices. You also have Huawei Share to send and receive documents or photos with very good speed. So in terms of ecosystem, Huawei works perfectly well. Let's talk now a little about the ecosystem, which I think is a very strong point in Huawei, as you have the Super Device function. It immediately detects Huawei devices that you have nearby to link quickly to interact with each other. Has the Super Hub, which is a shared clipboard also between multiple devices. So whatever you copy on your phone and send it to the Super Hub will be immediately available here, so you can continue to use it. You could also use this tablet as an extended monitor of your computer quite easily, even if you have a Huawei computer that does not have a touchscreen. You can take advantage of the touch capabilities of this second monitor to interact with any Windows application on your computer. We also find, for example, Huawei Share to quickly send content wirelessly and quickly. So as I tell you, the ecosystem I think is too complete in everything that has to do with Huawei. Remember that Huawei also has its own health platform with Huawei Health. Also in the app gallery, you would find the applications, and remember that in this case, through the app gallery, you can install Micro G, and after following a few configuration steps, you could use virtually all Google applications directly from the tablet, let's say natively without an emulator or simulator. So in the description, I also leave you a link to the tutorial where I show you how to install Micro G. It is exactly the same process that is done on cell phones, also on tablets, and you have the same compatibility. So I just tell you this because I think that the compatibility of applications can become a doubt. But in this case, I have been able to use, for example, Netflix or Prime Video or applications that have to do with content. In the previous blog, I told you about the specialized applications that Huawei has that work perfectly. With regard to security, I had already anticipated that it has a side fingerprint reader. In this case, it allows up to 5 records. Obviously, it will work correctly. It also has facial recognition. Although that is not so safe because it is not as secure. It is not three-dimensional, but with the fingerprint reader, you have more than enough. In addition, we are also going to find some other options like the smart unlock, which helps the tablet to stay unlocked while you have, for example, your Bluetooth headphones connected. So if you're on a video call or if you're listening to music with your tablet, you can set it to stay unlocked, which can be useful, for example, if you are at home and you don't want to have to be placing your fingerprint every time. It also has other tools such as application locking, so that even if you lend your tablet unlocked, other people cannot enter specific applications that you have selected to have a second lock filter. There is also the safe, where you can back up and safeguard private files, and it has the twin app feature, so you can use 2 instances of the same app. Here it also integrates the Huawei Password Manager, so that simply with your fingerprint you can automatically fill out certain forms of logins, and also has an option for sharing images to remove the metadata to maintain a little more privacy, and has the private space so that somehow you have 2 spaces on the same tablet. You could even use a space for work, a space for entertainment or your personal life, with the purpose of to have everything separated. Let's talk now about the battery, which has a capacity of 10,100 mAh, so that you more or less have an idea. I would say that it is equivalent to batteries of about 400-800 mAh in cell phones. Only that obviously here, having a larger screen, we will have more consumption. Then the NHO, I would say that in my tests it gave a very similar performance. As usual in Huawei, the applications running in the background try to manage them in a better way, although in this generation. I found that background apps that are consuming a lot of resources might get closed. In past generations, it seems to me that it kept them still running without closing them completely, although it gave them little power. Anyway, in the settings, you can manually set the behavior you want to have in the power management. So if there are applications that you consider very important to keep running in the background, you can assign them. It is important to configure that setting so that the system does not run out of battery life. An important fact is that when you have the tablet on standby, that is, when you simply turn off the screen but do not turn off completely, the tablet can reach up to 380 days of life. And then it does not download as fast when it is alone. Suspended. In this case, the tablet can use a 100 watts charger that comes included, and that is not very big. In 15 minutes, it recovered 31% of the battery, which is quite remarkable considering its size. In 30 minutes, it reached 63%, and the full charge was completed in 1 hour and 5 minutes. And I repeat, considering the size of the tablet, I think it is a very positive thing. The speed of the charge will not let you down. If you suddenly have little battery left and you have little time, I think if you reach, you can recover a very good percentage in a few minutes. And for everyday use, if you have the power saving mode, that will surely restrict some things in order to extend the duration, and also has smart charging. So if you get to leave it charging overnight, in several days it will turn on your routine use and will charge much slower to not deteriorate so fast to the battery. On the other hand, it also has a charging lock, so if you suddenly need to have it plugged into the power because you need it not to turn off at any time, you could also activate this lock to avoid degrading the battery so fast. Let's go now to test the performance that it has this device, because its processor is somewhat unknown. It is a Kirin T91. Let's say it is the new generation of Huawei processors. In this case, we are talking about a high-end processor, and we're opening some tabs in the web browser. Obviously, it will depend on the internet connection, in this case the speed of response it reaches, but what I am most interested in testing is how well or poorly managed RAM memory, so it comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM. In this case, we have the 5th tab open, and I am using Google Chrome simply as a reference data. In fact, also serves to show you that if you can run virtually all Google applications you want, then there we are. Let's log in simply so you see how in this case I already have several applications open, including ChatGPT. Let's also open Canvas so you can see how from the web browser you can open several of these tools perfectly well. And in fact, social networks is more advisable to open them from the browser so that you can have a wide view. Just have the computer view option selected in Google Chrome or some other browsers so that you can have precisely this experience that takes advantage of the wide screen. So at this point, as I tell you, we are now with Canva, and let's go to Google News. In fact, it seems that Google Chrome has become a little slower in the exchange of tabs, but it still keeps running. That is, we do not see that. The tab reload, something that could become common within tablets, but I remind you that in this case we find 12 gigabytes of RAM, so somehow that helps applications stay running, or in this case the browser tabs. So as you see, we are not witnessing reboots, but a slightly slower change, although that could also depend entirely on the web browser you are using. And as I told you, in this case I am using Chrome. Although perfectly, we could also use Edge, which is available in the app gallery. They note that, in fact, in Edge, I notice a slightly faster loading of the tabs, but I insist. That also depends entirely on your taste as to what applications you like to run, but as you can see, the truth is that in terms of RAM usage, we see a positive experience because we are not noticing reboots when returning to a tab, but if it stays loaded, the last thing we had visualized, then the RAM experience is good. We see that there are no reboots, and in terms of power, in addition to the processor, which is the latest that Huawei has launched, comes with a 6-layer cooling system and double layer of graphene, a vapor chamber 105% larger with respect to past generations. Then, in short, the RAM is very well managed. Perhaps it would be more convenient to open things from another browser other than Chrome to have a much more fluid sharing experience, but notice we are going to open anything in this case, just so you can see how we can go about opening everything quickly. We will even use Gemini, and we are going to tell it give me the list of 15 websites that are the most popular, and well, in this case it is showing me here some options. We are going to enter, for example, also Twitch. Although obviously you could also use applications from these services, but I am just showing you in a way that you can see how we can open everything quickly. Simple experience just for you to see that from Microsoft Edge. It seems to me that you have a much more fluid exchange of all these tabs, unlike Google Chrome that seemed that it was not going 100% optimized. But anyway, it keeps running all these tabs that we already had loaded. Now we'll just do a quick fluidity exercise, opening all these applications. And note that in this case, I think it's pretty good. We're going to open also the calendar and some other additional applications, even the MPin zone that loads you applications optimized for the MPencil, and well, all of them have opened quite fast. As I tell you, look, they are loaded in this case. So the experience, I would say, is quite fluid when you are working with these applications. Even as I tell you, you can also install Facebook. Here we have the web browser that we closed it for this test, but there it is. You see that it opens quite fast again. Then I think it's very well with all these applications that we already have open. We also see this fast and considerably fluid experience. If you want a reference in benchmarks of the power that can reach this processor, note that in Geekbench gave us 1298 in single core, 4225 in multi-core. That is slightly below the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, so I think it has good power. In the case of Antutu, it got 6,99,162 points. I think it is not bad. Although obviously it will not be its main strength, as Huawei faces very important challenges in the issue of their processors. But honestly, they have done a very good job. But to have a clearer reference of the behavior that games have, let me tell you how it was in each of the contents that we installed. I simply tell you that once you install MicroG with App Gallery, you could recover the progress of several games. Although I would not like to tell you that all the games work at 100% because that would be a too bold assertion, but at least of those I have tested, practically all worked. However, I think you could find yourself with some other game that may not allow you to recover the progress, or you mark some error at the time of downloading, especially in the case of games that are not within the App Gallery. Obviously, if the game is in App Gallery, it should work correctly, but if not, if you install it from external sources, you may face some difficulties, although App Gallery has been growing gradually in the catalog. But obviously, there are still several contents that are not in the App Gallery. available. In fact, I installed several of them, and below, let me tell you how they did. To begin with, we play Call of Duty, and note that by default, in this case, we load the very high graphics quality at a very high frame rate. We can also go up to the ultra rate, although the graphics quality drops to the lowest level, or we can select the very high graphics quality at a maximum frame rate. So compatibility seems to be good, in fact also appear. There are several effects available, which speaks very well of the development of this processor and its GPU. Experimental options also appear, and the experience was honestly good. At the beginning, there were a few drops in frames per second, especially when falling on the map, which is relatively normal. Even recording the screen, there are moments where it seems to drop slightly in frames per second, but it does not freeze completely or anything like that, besides obviously. They don't drop too low. In fact, the lowest peak it had in our test still wasn't considerably high. So for example, it stays around 45 frames per second at the lowest. So even recording the screen, we will find a good gaming experience, I insist. You would simply have to verify that your favorite game is compatible with this device. Then we played Call of Duty, but now with the ultra rate setting to give priority to the frames per second and see what it was capable of. And the truth is that it's fine. The experience is going to be pretty good. It controls the temperature well. Again, we see that it runs smoothly with good graphics. Although in this case, the graphics, as I tell you, are set to the lowest level when you choose the highest possible high refresh rate. But still, you yourself are watching the screen recording that we did, and the truth is that the game looks well enough detailed. Then we played Henshin Impact by default. It gives the average graphics quality, which it is positive, but for the test, we went up to the high level and also went up to 60 frames per second to see what it was capable of. And in this case, it is not able to keep 60 frames per second 100% stable, but if there are quite a few fluctuations, fortunately it does not go down considerably. So there are no moments where the gaming experience becomes bad because of too many freezes, just that it is not able to keep the experience very high at 60 frames per second. Stable. So if you want to play in very high quality with total stability, it would not be the ideal device for that, but if you are a little bit more casual gamer, I think it can perfectly give you a good performance. You yourself are seeing the result by recording the screen, and remember that recording is always a little more work for the processor. In this case, we measured the frames per second without recording the screen, but you are also watching the gameplay with the screen recorded. Then we played Zenless Sound Zero, and in this case, we also adjusted the settings for medium image quality. We went up to 60 frames per second for see what it was capable of, and note that in this case, the experience again I think is positive for a casual gamer. If you are of the more demanding kind, possibly if you are faced with some moments with small stumbles in the frames per second. But overall, it is going to perform correctly. Also, the temperature I think is still sufficiently well controlled. However, in this case, in this game, if we saw a little more stumbles than in the rest of the content, it could also be due to a matter of optimization and adaptation and more, but overall, as I say, for casual players is fine. For more demanding players, perhaps remains to be seen a little. Finally, we play Arena Breakout. In this case, note that we set it to the highest possible quality. The 90 frames per second rate is not yet available on this model, but we select the ultra rate at 1%. HD HDR quality, and I must say, this game is available in the app gallery, so it is much better optimized, and that is reflected in the performance. Practically maintains 60 frames per second stable with enough freshness and good stability. It must be said that the screen recording is not in such a high resolution. Hopefully this can be improved in future updates, since for now the screen recording is done in a resolution of 1920x 2160 pixels, but at a low rate of bits per second, so the results maybe don't look as detailed as one would imagine, but that's already on much more detailed matters of experience. And well, with this we are coming to the end of this video review. I think that as a conclusion we are in front of a tablet that can be attractive for a certain number of users. I think in general tablets can come to be considered as a kind alternative to a computer, and I think in this price range specifically could offer you a much better quality screen than a laptop would offer you. The front-facing camera experience also for video calls is much better than what most laptops in this price range would offer you. You obviously don't have Windows though, so you're a bit more limited in terms of the number of applications you could run. But if you want, for example, something for school, to take notes, to create your office documents in a relatively simple way, it can perfectly meet those needs, having the advantage of being much more compact, lightweight, and with the possibility of taking notes by hand. At the screen with the paper matte finish, it definitely catches the eye, so it is a product that I think can be attractive to certain people. In the description, I leave the purchase link in case you are interested in it. For the moment, this has been all.